Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul. I'll be your host this evening. You know what? I might even get a couple of guests on because, boy, oh boy, there I have been in the green room kind of area waiting out for these boys to arrive who have said, oh, yes, I'll be there. Paul, don't worry, I'll be there on time. Yes, well, there's on time and then there's, I don't know. Stephen, are you running on island time?
Yeah, I am a wee bit, mate. Very unprofessional. Very unprofessional. I actually just went and made myself a cup of tea before and just lost track of time. So I do apologise. Saw your note and thought, holy heck, whole 2 minutes to quickly get on the thread here. So hey, I'm here. I'm sure Boa is not too far away.
And Boa, I mean, what would you say to your players who turn up late to training at Manukau Rovers?
No. My time's always good. If you want to have a good time, you got to have a good watch. I've got the good watch on tonight. So I believe I just made it in time. Although I have to say, if I was coaching and I'd expect to be there 15 minutes before session starts. So that's what I usually preach to my players.
Well, welcome, Stephen. Welcome, Boa. I hope you're both fit and well and safe and up there in the 09 and keeping yourself safe.
Yeah, listen, always a privilege to be on the TDM, but I must admit, after being in lockdown for going into our 7th week now, my whole sense of time has completely gone out the window, which is a little bit of a concern when I really do have to physically go back to work.
Yeah, I have to say the days seem that much longer, and as far as rugby is concerned, NZR actually, getting coach educators and coach developers to do a lot of stuff online. So it's, a lot of assessments, a lot of video analysis, lots of teaching, lots of forums online. And I guess it's just the new normal. And the moment I actually have to go out of the house, it actually feels really weird. So what can I say?
Well, that's great. Because, look, I'll be honest, from the outside, looking at New Zealand rugby, there's really been. Stephen and I talked about this a bit on the 5 p.m. Lockdown beers and rugby chat. Was kind of the lack of communication with fans. We've obviously got the All Blacks going playing over in Australia, and they're producing all their content around that, which has been good. They've been producing some content around the NPC. But we've got no idea what games are happening. Well, we know what's happening this weekend. We've got 4 games this weekend, but after that, we have no idea. But it's good to see that behind the scenes, a lot along on the coaching side. I'm assuming also on the refereeing side that it does look like so there are comms. They are keeping you busy and helping you develop still.
Yeah, because look, the basic philosophy with growing any organization is if you want to grow your organization, you got to grow your people. So it's really important that you get your coaches, your coach developers, educators, referee educators and developers, growing the human resource we have. And of course we have we have an ongoing shortage of coaches, and same with referees. So you have to really look after the people, particularly those volunteers at the community level who come on board. So one of my key focuses, I'm actually not going to wait for anyone, for the union to tell me, look, go and do something. I'm doing a lot of stuff with some of the directors of Auckland clubs who are doing their post-season reviews. They're looking at new recruitment. So coaches, there's a lot of cross talk. So, as far as behind the scenes stuff, it's fantastic, really enjoying it. And I guess this is something based on what you've said. Perhaps what's happening behind the scenes needs to be actually told to the rugby public at large, so you can get that engagement, and possibly we can get more coaches and referees from this rugby-loving public.
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot that goes on, and there's a lot of roles at New Zealand Rugby and at the various provinces, and we don't really know what they do. Now, I don't necessarily need to know exactly what Joe Bloggs does at Counties Manukau, or what Freddie Jones does at Auckland Rugby, or what down in Canterbury, what Marion does down there. But just some kind of as you say, just a little bit of actually singing their own praise around what they do away from high performance sport would be a good thing, because we kind of hear, oh yes, the clubs are the lifeblood of New Zealand rugby and blah blah blah, but we never actually hear what they do with them. So I think, and that's why we've had a couple of DrivingMaul specials where I had a chat with Campbell and Aaron. Oh, I've forgotten the guy's surname. Lawson, thank you. From Northland and from Counties Manukau, talking to them about about what they would do and how they would grow the grassroots game if they had the funding from something like Silver Lake. So those videos are available on our Facebook page, YouTube channel. If you want to go and have a listen to those, if you can't find them, drop me a line and I'll send you a link. But yeah, and also on our podcast as well, folks. So don't forget you can also get in touch via the podcast, where all good pods are got. I'm stealing that from someone else's podcast as to how they say it. But so that's all how you can find us. What are we going to talk about today? We'll have a chat about the Rugby Championship, have a look back. We'll focus mainly on the All Blacks, but we'll also, being New Zealand Sport Radio, but we will look at the other teams as well. Have a quick chat about who are the winners and losers from all of that. Look forward a bit towards the November tours. Unfortunately, we got news today that Samoa will be have pulled out of their tour of Europe, which is obviously a real shame for them. Gone blank as to who they were playing. I think it was Romania, Georgia, Spain, plus the Barbarians from memory. But no, it can't. No, it was Georgia. Uruguay was in there as well. So clearly, I've got one of those wrong because they're playing 3 games plus the Barbarians. So yeah, a real shame that they've had to pull out. But that's down to their country's border controls, which we fully understand, and obviously out of the union's control. So we'll have a look forward. Also, there's question marks around the box. We'll have to talk about that as well as talking about the NPC, as we've had Steve Lancaster has had a chat today about what might be going on around the NPC as well. But before I get into that, Steve made a tea. Don't know what Bro's got, but I need to open up my space, so I'm going to pour my beer.
Well, while you're pouring that beer, I'm once again, my body is a temple, so back on the water again. But I have had a cup of tea, I've got to say, with a couple of biscuits. So I'm trying to justify that at the minute is pretty much what I'm doing. But I just want to touch on something Nocturnal Rights has just said there. New Zealand has such a rich history of rugby, but they never used to promote it. And man, I've got to totally agree with that. We're probably only a few weeks away from Super Rugby sides being named. What about each franchise maybe running a competition for their supporters about who they think is going to make the side, and whoever comes up with the names closest to the side wins a couple of season tickets or something along those lines. Been very little talk about Moana Pacifica, apart from the own little digging that we've actually done ourselves, Paul. But to me, it's really disappointing. You come from England, where the number one game is football, but I know very well during the off season there's still plenty happening. You're hearing in the press about signings or potential new signings, etc., etc. So there's always that interest and that engagement there for fans.
Yeah, look, and I think and LB says, in South Africa we always use our history and promotions, and I think to a certain degree, New Zealand they kind of do a bit in New Zealand. I mean, we've had the sort of we've seen on social media them go through and do best sort of blues sides of all time and that kind of thing. During lockdown, we had some fun and games between the provinces when they were doing. They did employee 15s to take on each other, which was kind of amusing. But I think the way that New Zealand rugby, from my experience, see things is that they have the year very much compartmentalized. So Super Rugby talks about rugby during the Super Rugby season, and the franchises generally keep relatively quiet outside of that. We've seen that change a bit this year, where with every All Blacks release, each of the franchises has been given a graphic which highlights their players that will be playing that weekend. So there's a little bit of that there. from the provinces, you don't hear that much. We won't hear anything about NPC or high performance outside of that window. They're talking about community rugby and club rugby. I tried to do an interview with Clayton McMillan and I've gone blank. The Waikato top try scorer. Anyway, basically Clayton McMillan as the Maori All Blacks head coach, and Roger Randall as his assistant coach at the Maori All Blacks. I tried to interview with them about the Maori All Blacks and got told, sorry, we don't want to distract them from their current job. They're not allowed to talk about that outside of the Maori All Black window, which is like 2 weeks long. And you're kind of like, seriously, guys, why can't we talk about these things outside of that? Because I mean, Roger Randall, Clayton McMillan, 2 guys I have talked to a lot of times because as they've been coaches and assistant coaches at Bay of Plenty, Waikato, and the Chiefs. They know who I am. I've had the dubious privilege of seeing Roger Randall getting changed into his into his blazer after a game as well. I
thought you were going to say you were waiting for him to get out of the shower or something like that. Paul, I hope not. Well, hopefully at least you managed to get in there with the leading try scorer. I think that's Coombs Fabling, who's the top try scorer in the Waikato team at the moment, Paul, if I stand corrected.
Oh, no, I've meant all time. Roger Randall's got the most in the season.
Oh, right.
I was trying to think Roger Randall's name.
Roger.
So, gentlemen, this whole, disconnect, the reason is it's reflective of the be-all and end-all, which is high performance in professional rugby, because that's what, over the last few years, particularly in ZR, it's been a strong criticism from the community and grassroots groups, where, that the top 1% of the pyramid is what the game is all about. And everything else, if we kind of give them a shout, it's all good, but, we don't really sort of want to highlight and portray. What actually needs to happen is to have this sort of engagement. You tear itself down and you go down into the pyramid right to the foundation. And that starts with the franchises, the provinces, the clubs, the schools, and the community level engagement. Now, imagine every time an All Black is named, and each of these segments in the pyramid gets a little slice and a little representation, and there's social media saying, hey, guess what? Patrick Tupoloto, remember his school days, here's a photo, he's running around in a park. And we do this often enough, we're going to see a very different face to the marketing side of it, and we're going to see a lot more community engagement. Now, this is what a lot of successful professional sports leagues around the world have done, particularly when you come to NFL. They hunt it right down to the neighborhood. Remember the little kid who was throwing the ball around the block, and he nailed what is it called, a touchdown across a block. So there's plenty of examples out there, but for some strange reason, because rugby in this country is so super concentrated, literally on Super Rugby and Test level, everything else just gets kind of lost in translation. And it's only when it suits the end result, people will kind of jump on the bandwagon, and that's where the issue is.
That's
only when it suits. I mean, funny that LB mentions NFL just like you in the live chat, just as you were doing it in as well. Yes, we can learn lessons from that.
That's a really good point Boa makes, and I'll give you a case in point. Northland's victory over Waikato on the weekend. That's bottom team taking out the top team. If Waikato had rocked up, just won that game, there would have been no real big story within that. Admittedly, Rangers 100th game, but to win the game, all of a sudden, it's elevated, if you know what I mean. I know exactly where Boa is coming from, but there's also other examples of that. I mean, to say that game between Bay of Plenty and Hawke's Bay the other week was just an amazing game. It was amazing, not just because it's a game of rugby, but it was an amazing theatre as well. And really, the media just jumps on it so late, it's not funny. Train's already pulled out of the station.
Yep. Simon's saying, I don't think NFL is a good example, as they've got a college system when they get players who are free. Yeah. No, look, we're not saying we want to copy the NFL system around player development or those sort of structures, but we can learn something from the NFL around marketing. and the way they market the game and the sport, and same with the NBA as well. Those two are doing it at a another level. Somebody who I've have to throw this one over to Stephen here, but apparently Nocturnal Rights likes it when we had people like Andy Hayden and Peter Thorburn having a go at each other on TV. But I'd say people I'm not aware of.
They're great, real stalwarts of the game during the sort of. I think Peter played for Auckland back in the 60s, and of course Hayden in the 70s. So they were slightly different sort of eras, but rest in peace both of them. But yeah, it was great. You know, they were challenging each other if they didn't agree with each other. Right now, you sort of watch a program, for example, like Breakdown, and they're all sitting around like a group of mates.
Except Jake. I mean, Jake. To be fair, Jake, I don't agree with his opinions. Yeah. He's the exception. But I mean, some people might say, Stephen, that you agree with me too much as well on these shows. No, perhaps you need to stand up for yourself a bit more. There you go.
True.
Craig in the live chat's got a question saying, Paul, have you ever run into Wayne Smith in Waihi, Paul? It's not a huge town, is it? It's not a huge town. You're quite right. He lives in Waihi Beach, and I live in Waihi Beach, where also Gatlin lives, and a few other rugby coaches as well. But yes, I have run into Wayne Smith, and I do the video work for Waihi Rugby Club. And Wayne Smith is going to be an assistant coach next year at Waihi Rugby Club. So he did a bit of work with us towards the end of the season, and he's asked me to take the camera down for trainings. So have I bumped into him? Yes, I have. We're not close mates by any stretch of imagination, but on a kind of like, hello, hey, how you doing, mate? Kind of level. And I'll be doing camera work for him next season. Do they live on the same street as me? No, they live down at the beach, which is nice, where all the expensive houses are, and I live up next to the gold mine, where the cheaper houses are. Funnily enough, being a mining town, but there we go. The Palisade. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we're going with my. I might be English, but my English, I'm not good with words. Anyway, let's get into the meat and two veg of the show. I mean, we're only 17 minutes in, and we're still doing intro stuff. Looking at the Rugby Championship then, winners and losers from the Rugby Championship. I guess from a team point of view, the All Blacks, having won the championship, have got to be considered winners. I think from Australia, with 4 wins back to back, they've got to be considered winners. There was an interesting piece or John O'Connor gave us a piece in our live chat about one on Rugby Pass, where they were kind of suggesting that perhaps the Springboks are seeing it as a victory because they beat the All Blacks, and the All Blacks might be seeing it as a bit of a failure, this one, by not having a clean sweep. Thoughts on that, boys? What do you think on those for those two teams?
Listen, it's for the All Blacks and All Black supporters. Oh yeah, it will definitely hurt. No question, because I think they went into this series not only just to win it, but they really wanted to make a point to South Africa that you're the world champions, but we can get the better of you. But I think the pride's been dented a wee bit, because I think in both tests, especially up front, they were taken to task. And even though the history will say that they won the Rugby Championship convincingly enough, it'll also say it could be a bit of a watershed moment for the All Blacks, that you got beaten in one of the tests, but in effect in both tests the Springboks probably tore you a new one up front. So it's just the way New Zealand rugby critiques itself, with and it's done through our journalists, and it's done through our supporters. Sometimes it can be seen as disrespectful to the opposition. Not at all. Like I say, a lot of the I think I also said on our rugby chat, I've looked at a lot of the social network sites, and most people are being very, very complimentary to the Springboks. That was a very impressive performance.
Bill, your thoughts?
Well, look, I mean, you say we have to consider the All Blacks. They won 5 out of 6, and they won the championship with 1 game to go. the reality is, as far as All Black supporters and fans go, unless the All Blacks win every single game by 51 plus points and attack every single opportunity, whether it's the most toughest test match, there'll still be people who will criticize it. So I can completely understand why there is this sentiment. But the reality is, had the All Blacks won half the games and actually won the championship, they would have achieved what they set out to go and achieve. And I mean, come on, let's not lose sight of the fact that last test loss to South Africa. That was an epic test. It was one of the greatest games played. And you're not going to score tries of every set play, every bit of broken play against the reigning world champions. And the reigning world champions had to huff and puff right till the last moment, and they had to draw on everything they have to beat an All Black side who had absolutely no right to be in that game, let alone be in the lead. So again, I think we just need to get some perspective on this. And congratulations to the world champions. That was a amazing game. But I think everyone just needs to kind of take a step back and be happy that they were part of such an epic contest. And that's what Test rugby is about. You bring the pressure, and people will make mistakes, and then it's punch, counter punch. It's like going 12 rounds for the world heavyweight boxing title, and then it goes down to a split decision, and one judge will see it slightly differently. So, all in all, I'm just pleased that in these COVID times we got such a grandstand spectacle right at the end. But I think everyone kind of needs to get some perspective on where things are at. And look, the All Blacks they thumped the Wallabies 3-0. They beat the Springboks in the first game, so it's a 1-1 draw, and they beat the Argentinians quite convincingly. Whereas if you look at the other opponents, i.e. the Wallabies and the Springboks, they had scratchy wins against the other opposition. Apart from that one win where the Wallabies just took the Springboks, they beat them quite convincingly. So all in all, I think the table is very reflective of where things are at. But I think everyone kind of needs to get a little bit of perspective on where things are at. And no one is going to remain unbeaten in a competitive professional environment like this. It's just simply not sustainable. And it's frankly quite unrealistic.
A couple of things from the live chat there. Aaron goes, Springbok, it's due respect to the Springboks, our most respected opponents. Absolutely. And LB says, look, not really a victory, but under the circumstances. I think that's what we've got to do. What we've got to realize here, under the circumstances, this was actually it was a decent result for South Africa. Remember, they've been under lockdown since June. Oh, sorry, not under lockdown. They've been in a bio bubble since June, or whatever we're calling it nowadays. They've had 21 players at one point or another who've had COVID out of this squad. It's been nuts for them. It's also been nuts for Argentina, who have had a horrible year, both results-wise and also bubbling wise or travel wise, whatever you call it. So you've got to say that, I guess Argentina unfortunately are the losers out of this because of that. Look, they beat the All Blacks last year, didn't come close this year. Whereas clearly they've stepped backwards now, unfortunately. So I think they're the biggest losers out of this is their form. But again, we do have to take circumstances into consideration to a degree as well with them around that. So and Elby says, need to remember that the Rugby Championship is a tournament of the best teams in the world. It's going to be close to the challenge. Absolutely. Now, but funny enough, I think we were having chats before this that actually that remember John in our chats as well was from a South African point of view. Look, the Rugby Championship wasn't really the matter. It was the two games against the All Blacks. I think also from New Zealand's point of view, there was a certain degree of that as well. That look, the games against the Springboks were the important games. The actual title, did anyone really care about that? And I think so I think it's been more about those two games, particularly it being the 100th game as well involved there.
Paul, I was going to say when you actually talk about maybe a team that were sentimental winners. Boy, I think you've got to give a lot of credit to Australia, because I've just seen a tournament team that was named by Planet Rugby, and in this team there's six Wallabies named in this. Now this is a tournament team that's overall. Now, if somebody had told me that they'd get 6 players in a tournament team at the end of this tournament, I would have gone, yes, no, not really. But if anything, they had some guys that really stepped up at this level. We always knew that somebody like Michael Hooper was an outstanding player, but boy, the surprises have been Andrew Callaway. I mean to say, Paul keeps reminding me that he was playing for Counties Manukau, running around in front of nobody about a year ago. It's just crazy, and I didn't see that one coming. He's probably got to be one of the most improved players that I've actually seen in the Rugby Championship. But just to give you an idea, the rest of the players that they've got, Quade Cooper's been named at number 10.
Well, actually, no, let's run through that team. Then I've got it here now. And let me know if you think anybody, if they got it wrong. So Jordy Barrett at 15. I think it's already been, probably has been the form fullback across the tournament there. I think there's not much arguing with that one, even if you did struggle a bit under the high ball against the Springboks. Then I think most people will do. Andrew Callaway out on the right wing. There, and his try scoring's been great. If you think what Mapimpi's been out there, you're looking at, Mapimpi's was on the right, wasn't he? The All Blacks have had Will Jordan, but for a couple of games they've also had Reese out there. They've had, they've really been mixing it up. So I don't think anyone. I think he's probably been the most consistent player. They put Am in at 13. Again, boys, if you disagree with any of these or think there's any other contenders, then do shout out.
Special mention for Len Ikito. I thought Len Ikito in his pretty much in his debut season was pretty outstanding. And Lucanio Arm, are we basing this just on one game? Because that's what it comes down to. I don't know if Boa would agree with me, but I would be tempted to go for Len Ikito for that position.
Yeah, look, with the 13, I mean, if you look at outright stats for post-contact line breaks and meters made, it was Rico Ioane. So there's no question when it comes to statistics. But I understand where coming with Ikitau. I mean, he had some decent numbers. But again, this is going to be a very subjective sort of thing. I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in numbers and stats. And end of the day, the numbers don't lie. So based on that, I'll have to pick Rico Ioane.
We've got to also remember that 13 is also about defence as well as attack. So on that side of things as well. So you can have all the line breaks. If you don't defend, then you do have 2 jobs to do. But even so, three good players in that 13 jersey. Samu Kerevi, perhaps the best 12 in the world at the moment.
For me, the player of the tournament, Samu Kerevi, coming from sevens, I have to say, hardly any player out there who's come back from sevens. It's very, very difficult to adapt into 15s, let alone coming into a championship. So Samu Kerevi, wow, that's outstanding, and I think for me, a clear top pick player of the tournament.
Yep. Onto the left wing, they've gone with Corabetti on the left wing.
Yep. You got
lots of nods from Stephen there.
Yeah, no argument there. Move on.
Yeah, but again, the numbers, he did something like 273 meters. So for a winger, absolutely. And of course, he scored that, crunch try against the Springboks, which really turned the tide. So yeah, clear top pick there, no question.
Okay, then. So Stephen was going to say, the argument now, number 10, Quade Cooper.
Yeah, Quade Cooper gets the pick, and he probably deserves it. But you've got to ask that question: did he offer more than Baden Barrett? I know Baden Barrett probably on Saturday probably just felt the heat a wee bit. But we've got to remember, Quade only really came in, or when was it? Was for that first game against the Springboks. Where I think Baden Barrett was pretty much there for the whole tournament. So listen, I'm not too fussed either way. I think I'd almost be tempted to go with Barrett as opposed to Cooper.
Oh, for me, it's a very easy pick, Jordy Barrett, because if you looked at what he did against the Wallabies and the Argentinians, and also, there were a couple of outstanding pieces of play against the Springboks. No question. I think Quade Cooper against the Springboks, particularly in the first game, he had nothing to do because half the time it was stoppage, water break, and, he had a clean jersey, nothing to do. So purely on work rate, line breaks, and, some outstanding pieces of work. Again, clear top pick, DB at number 10.
Yeah, I think so. That's look, Quade Cooper played well. Don't get me wrong; he's played a lot better than most of us were expecting in those 4 games. But still, they've gone for Nick White as the number 9, as the best 9 in the tournament. Really?
Yep, you know what? I think I'll go along with that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's even the best 9 in Australia. I mean, I prefer Tate McDermott personally.
But would you? The problem is for McDermott that we know that he's got talent, but I just don't know if we actually saw enough of him. I mean to say, if you look around at the other halfbacks, I don't think they quite did enough. And you know what? In the games that mattered, especially those 2 Springbok games for the Australians, he was really good. And based on that, I've got to give it to Nick White, and he kept that consistency going through in the last two games against the Pumas.
Well, Bella's nodding there, so I'm guessing I'm outvoted.
Look, yeah, I understand what Steven's saying, but again, I have to agree with him. Just hardly any outstanding. Like, no one really put their hand up. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Herschel and just the halfback who came on for Faf de Klerk actually play a lot more game time, because I think he's one of the real stars of the future. So we didn't really see anyone really grab the bull by the horns. Yeah, we can go with Nick White. Tate McDermott had some patches of brilliance, but then again, that obliteration against the All Blacks, he really got hammered around. So, yeah, I mean, a very lukewarm nod from me for Mr. Nick White.
Coming into the pack, then they've gone for Ardie Surveyor at 8. Obviously, Valentini also had a good game. We've also had gone blank as the Springboks.
Vermeulen,
Vermeulen,
who started off definitely with having had no game time and coming back from injury, but I think finished off towards the end of the second game, or in the second game against All Blacks, playing some key pieces. So yes, I probably didn't put it together over enough games. But happy with Ardie, or are we going to tell us numbers that push Rob Valentini there?
Oh, no comparison, guys. I mean, Ardie nearly made 200 meters right across the championship, and that's you expect that from your outside backs. So I think overall, looking at all the games, no question, Ardie Surveyor.
LB has got to go. I think Vermeulen at 8. As I say, I think he only ended up playing 2 good games, which were the All Blacks games. So I think it's hard to give him the number 8 jersey. Look, don't get me wrong. I think he was had very good games in those ones and was part of a dominant pack. But yeah, I'm not sure you can give it to him for that. Having missed the first 2 games, and not Michael Hooper then at 7. I think most people are going to be comfortable with that one. And at 6, now this is going to be a bit controversial. They've gone for Akira Ioane, who had sort of 4 good games, and then a lot of people say went missing against the Springboks. And you think that Quagga Smith, okay, he was wearing 7, but that's the equivalent of a Kiwi 6. I'd say that I think Quagga Smith had perhaps a better tournament than Akira Ioane.
I'd agree with it. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would go Quagga Smith. For me, Akira, listen, Australia was outstanding against Australia, but we never really saw that form again against 2 teams that play quite a in your face and in your face style in the Pumas and of course the Springboks. So for me, Quagga Smith just outstanding. Even the fact that he came in for those last two games against the All Blacks.
Numbers wise, there's no disputing. It was Akira. Akira again had something like 234 run meters. I think it was 6 try assists. So overall, numbers-wise, Akira is a head and shoulders above. But purely for those injecting himself into the key moments of the game, absolutely, Quagga Smith. In fact, a few weeks back, I made a very strong case saying that Quagga needs to be starting all the time for the Box, and you can see clearly him with another few players who was Francois Stein, who I put a very strong case fourth, and he was, eventual match winner for the Box. I would actually go Akira / Quagga Smith. I'd start with Akira. If things don't work out, I'd get the fetcher Quagga Smith in there.
Not so much. Yeah, Akira was a candidate for the 13 jersey, not for the 6 jersey, as he played so wide so much. And yep, I can see the argument there. Into the engine room then, Ludi Jaeger. Yep, he really has been very good with his around the line out in particular. So I'm comfortable with him there. A bit surprised he didn't go with Scott Barrett though at 4, as I think he's been outplayed by Brody Retallick. Never mind any other players around the park. So, what do your stats say on this one?
Again, look, overall tournament, it's actually quite hard to look past the All Black locking pair of Brody and Scott Barrett. Obviously, Scott took that nasty shot to his collarbone early up in that last game, and he was subbed early. But again, if you look at the whole tournament, and I mean, let's not lose fact of we're looking at the team of the tournament, not team of the last game. And I think this is where the whole kerfuffle has happened, and the waters have been muddied. Look, Lutiaga had a great last game, but right until then, most of the time they were walking. So again, the criticism has to be, because we're judging professional athletes on numbers and their involvement when they get injected into the game at crucial times. So for me, it's again Brody and Scott Barrett overall tournament stats.
I think I go with Ludiaga and Brody, because I think Ludiaga's particularly at the line out time and maybe I'm being also influenced by how he performed in the British and Irish Lions tournaments, so perhaps I'm thinking more of the season rather than necessarily just these games. I don't remember. I didn't actually watch the Springbok Argentinian games, to be honest, or I can't remember them. It's that long ago. Stephen, your engine room?
Listen, I think I'll go. Listen, Scott Barrett, I think has actually played really well, but I'll also go for Lud Delaga. I think he's a world-class lock, and it's quite interesting looking at his body shape over the last few seasons. Completely changed. He used to be quite this big, sort of bulky lock, but he's just really trimmed out nicely and looks like a complete athlete. And listen, I like the way he plays with a lot of physicality. I can only really think of one mistake he made, and that was a defensive misread against Cody Taylor in the opening minutes of that test against the Springboks. But in the main, I just think he's been solid.
So 2 for Lude, 2 for Scott, and 2 for Brody in that one. So I think what this also shows us is that we are blessed with a lot of talented locks in World Rugby at the moment. When you add in your players like Itoji, obviously Etzebeth, there's a couple of good guys with Ireland. You've obviously got Alwyn Jones, etc. So I think there's lots of good locks at the moment, which is great to see. Into the front row then, they've gone Tanalea Tupou at tight head, and I've got nods from Boa there, so I'm guessing he's got some good numbers.
Yeah, almost 112 run meters. So for a front row, that's outstanding. I mean, there are some, backs, some good running backs won't even make into the high 70s. So Daniel has done well. You have to give it a perspective as well. He did really well, particularly against the 2 Argentinian games. But in one of the All Blacks game, he was pretty much non-existent. So overall, again, looking at numbers, and also, he put some telling hits, even though there was a couple of hits which, should have been sent to the naughty chair. So I think impact-wise, numbers-wise, Daniel Tupou, number 3.
I'm quiet because I agree with that.
Cool. Into the hooker position, they've gone with Cody Taylor. Mark's also had some good games. Whether he put together 6 good games is a question mark, I guess, around that one. In two good players there. Remembering the remembering the Aussie guy doing far too many grass cutter tackles that got a yellow card, so I'm not going to go with him. So I do think it comes down to those ones. Nocturnal Right says Montoya for hooker. Go on, Stephen.
Yeah, I was about to say he deserves a special mention because I don't think he dropped his standards. I mean to say it's incredible. We're watching an Argentinian team that hasn't got the likes of Creevy still playing for them. But yeah, Montoya is a very, very good hooker. He's a class act, and you know what? He goes pretty close. But I think you got to stay with Cody Taylor.
Yeah, look, Montoya, for one telling stat off the top of my head, I think he got 28 from 28 tackles. So that's it's a pretty decent stat. In a competition as intense as the championship, and against all these the top three sides of the world, from run meters, attack, and obviously someone who can be all over the show. There's no question it's Cody Taylor. I would have loved to have seen a lot more of Tokeaho. I think he was the one misselection instead of Asafa Amoa. And look, I from a coaching point of view, I am very biased for players like Tokeaho. I love guys who can get nice and square, look opponents square in there and absolutely smash them. Definitely Montoya's in the picture, but based on attacking stats, try assists, and the line bust, I think Cody Taylor had 4 line busts. So for that reason, Cody just edges Montoya.
Also, 28 tackles over 6 games isn't that many for some of for forward, especially for Argentina, who spent a lot of time defending as well.
He had 100% tackle. He didn't.
Yeah.
That's for me. That's the key.
Understood. Then finally, they've gone for Kitsoff at the open side. There is as the final one. So again, not Moody's still the number one here in New Zealand, but I think I'm comfortable with Kitsoff taking that jersey.
Yeah, I've got to go along with you, Paul. I actually thought he was outstanding. Always brought an impact to the Springbok pack when he came on. In fact, both tests against the All Blacks, but I also thought he brought in a lot of impact against the Australians as well. Not his fault that they lost those 2 games, but yeah, I just liked his impact off the bench. You start after that, you really start scratching around. I'm just trying to think who the Australian. Listen, special mention for James Slipper as well, because I thought he did a really good job in that Australian scrum, and who's their scrum coach, Don McKellar. He's doing a very good job at that Australian side. But listen, in the main, Kitsoff I'd go for.
Cool.
Yeah, no question. Clear top pick because particularly coming off the bench, I think he had a total of 57 carries in the whole competition. So for a front row to do that right across, that's fantastic work. And I think he's the one guy consistently, no matter how good or bad the Springboks are playing, he just came and just gave it everything he had. And at this level, when you're a fully paid professional, rain or sunshine, you just turn up and do your jam. So in that respect, massive respect for Kitsoff and clear top pick for me.
Now then, we have taken longer over that than I was expecting. I was going to talk about winners and losers within the actual All Blacks squad. We've touched on some of them though, like Samasoni Tokalaho, definite winner there.
Ethan Blackadder, I think you can throw into that group as well, Paul. I thought Ethan Blackadder looks like he's built for test.
Yes,
yeah,
the problem where though,
and of course Jordy Barrett. I think Jordy, Ethan Blackadder, Tokeaho. Everyone else, right towards the end, we just faded away. But that was largely because the All Blacks, for some reason, keep persisting with playing this pattern where they only commit one cleaner into the ruck. Now, it worked really well when we had guys like Aaron Smith because ball was lightning quick. But soon as we take Aaron Smith out of the equation, so I think this is a very clear tactic the All Black coaching group are doing. But I think we will pay the odd price from time to time, as we did last weekend, where if you're only going to commit one cleaner to the ruck, you will get dominated. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things pan out. But for me, those three players, clear winners.
I think Quintapaya has also done his hasn't done himself any harm at all, heading in the sort of the right direction there with that one. David Haveli, whereabouts do we are we at with him? Is he the answer at 12, or are there question marks? And are we still looking for the 12 for the All Blacks?
So I'm not going to be too critical of him. He's been really good up until probably this last test. In the main, listen, I don't know if there's a heck you can do on the back of your forwards, basically getting done over at the end of the day. For me, you mentioned winners and losers before. I think the winners have actually been some of the new guys that have come in, like you say, like Quintapaya, like Ethan Blackadder, like Tupuvai. I think they've actually been more the winners, and to me, some of the disappointments has actually been the more experienced guys, or guys like Will Jordan. We kind of expected, I think on our own rugby chats, we expected big things from Will Jordan, but I got to say at the end of the day, real disappointing. Jordy Barrett for me, yeah, you got a real winner there.
Well, yes, I mean, Dave McKenzie therefore has to be a loser because he's losing that jersey to Jordy to a certain degree. I think we all had him down as being the 15 until Jordy came in and took it off him. Obviously, George Bridge, one of the losers out of this one, had a shocking first test against the Springboks. Stephen says, but as a winner, I think the fact that he didn't make the 23 for either the Springboks test, I think makes him actually a bit of a loser. Now, the opportunity he's got for the rest of the tour is fantastic because with Scott Barrett and Patrick Tuipulotu both returning to New Zealand and missing out on the USA and European tour, and Josh Lord and Sam Whitelock coming out to join Brodie and him, means that he's got great opportunities coming up. But I guess he wasn't able to cement that to get that bench spot off Patrick.
Well, look, for me in that last test, there were two critical selection errors. One was the non-selection of Tokeaho and Wa'i. And the issue is, things, gentlemen, when you're playing a very trunk-allocated, compact, high-intensity test competition, you need to manage your minutes and you need to manage the form lines of individual players a lot better. So the All Black high-performance unit would have learned a lot. And I think Patrick Tuipulotu, for me, was the biggest casualty. He clearly wasn't ready for that level of intensity. And also bringing Asafa Amoa was a mistake. I think having Tokeaho, who had awesome form the week before, could have easily transitioned that. And that is the level of physicality we would have actually wanted. And same with Wai, because I think from an athletic point of view, he's one of the most athletic players in that squad. Whereas pursuing the experience, or what you call the exposed form line of guys like Patrick Tuipulotu, clearly not ready to play this level of intense test rugby, was a letdown. So, and again, coming back to, I have to make mention with guys like David Haveli, I think they were overplayed a lot more minutes than they actually should. So there's going to be plenty of learnings, particularly in these COVID times when you're playing 5 tests back to back to back. You've got to learn to manage your minutes. So hopefully the Brains Trust would have worked that out. I'll throw some stats next week, some very interesting stats around these players and where to from here. Hopefully someone will latch on to that and maybe utilize it going forward.
Yep.
And Hoskins Tutu, again, another one that perhaps didn't take his opportunity. When you think that you're missing Sam Cane, they were missing Frizzell, Papuli, he got injured as well. So I think he's one that could see himself slip out of the All Black squad when those players come back.
I was going to say he was one that could have played in that test against Australia when they played in Perth. I think that he should have been given an opportunity. Maybe somebody like Akira should have been rested. And Boa makes a really good point about the minutes. Just on Patrick Tuipulotu, I was trying to think of a player who's of a similar ilk, and the player that I came up with is Luke Romano. They're not really what guys that you would call front of the line out jumpers. So your next expectation from those types of players, you want them to have a huge work rate around the field. If you think of somebody like Romano, yep, not a great jumper, but his work rate around the field is just absolutely fantastic. Whether he's carrying, whether he's hitting in the tackle, he hits hard, and that's what you want from that sort of tight lock. I think for Patrick Tuipulotu, we just never saw it or enough of it. We never saw any big contacts. I only saw one turnover and one decent carry. But unfortunately for Patrick, he's one of these players when a team hasn't got the ball, he's just not working hard enough off the ball. It's as simple as that.
So that's looking backwards. Looking forwards, I think I've already mentioned Va'i, but let's talk first off. I've already mentioned that Samoa unfortunately won't be able to tour. Now there's also the South Africans have come out and said, look, their tour goes to England, Wales, and Scotland, and at the moment South Africa is in I think it's called red list or something, which basically means that anyone coming from South Africa has to quarantine for 10 days. Now, with South Africa, with the Springboks having been in a bubble since June, and we're into October now, so that's a hell of a long time. They're going back to South Africa for a quick break, and then heading up to Europe. Now, if they have to do that 10-day quarantine, the South African government or South African head of the union have said that they'll actually scrap the tour, and that would be too much for the Springboks. So let's hope that they don't that the tour does go ahead, because there is some cracking lineups and games there against, say, three teams who made part of the British and Irish Lions. So boy, oh boy, there'll be a few players wanting to make some statements. Obviously, world champions up against those teams as well. Some cracking games there. But we'll see if that tour will or won't go ahead. I've heard other rumours around that in the URC that the South African teams might have to play some of their home games in Italy, which would be a massive loss for them, and would be a real obviously make their life even more difficult. So look, COVID is still having an impact on all of these things. Some of you says maybe South Africa should use the European-based players for the end-of-year tour. Well, they're already using 20 of them, I think it is, or 8 or 17 of them. So yes, the LBC is weird because the URC players haven't had to be in a bubble. Okay, I must have not been following that. I don't know when South Africa sort of went in or came out of the red zone or red category, whatever it's called, and whether the URC players had to do a 10-day quarantine and then were allowed out of a bubble. So we'll have to see about this one. So we'll see what goes on with those tours. I don't think there's any, unless you boys got anything else to say. I don't think there's much more apart from just saying what the facts are to say there, really.
Paul, just one thing I'd heard that the Samoan Barbarians game had sold 30,000 tickets. Now they may still go ahead and actually play that game, but they'll use Europe-based Pacific Island players to make up that Samoan team. Boy, once again, going to be a real tough ask, but they are playing a Barbarians team. So hey, let's hope everybody's in a festive attitude and they just go out and throw the ball around and give those people who have paid for a ticket just a good game or a good spectacle.
Yeah, so there's talk of that being a Samoan, sort of Samoan 15 rather than the official Samoan international team. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Simon makes a good point here, actually, that the URC teams may have gone through Ireland and Italy, and therefore if you spend 10 days there, you don't have to quarantine. And if we think about it, the first games were against Munster, Leinster, Treviso, and Zebre. So yes, the URC teams entered via Ireland and Italy, and therefore went round the quarantine rather than trying to go through the quarantine there, which explains how they did the URC piece on that one. Could we see Ireland and Scotland switching games or switching opponents to allow the Springboks to, or something along those sort of lines? I don't know.
Yeah, look, gentlemen, look, with this whole bio bubble thing, one thing I have to say is, look, there's no right or wrong answer. It really depends on, which school of thought you subscribe to. I mean, part of my time I volunteer to help seafarers, seagoing mariners, with some of their ongoing training issues, and this whole quarantine thing is a huge issue. I mean, there are people who work on ships for up to 10 months in a row without seeing family. So there are people out there doing things a lot harder. I'm not saying that is right, nor am I saying it is wrong. It is entirely up to the individual union to decide what they want to do. But I feel that professional sports people, regardless of what type of code they're in, be it rugby, football, do have certain privileges most other people don't. So I think that does need to be taken into consideration. And also, when you're engaged in a profession where you have to play sport for a living, that's what you have to do. So I think the unions just need to be a little bit more creative and make sure that they manage workloads and come up with strategies, i.e. utilizing players who are overseas. And that applies for everybody. So, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I sincerely hope that the Springboks play on, because it'd be really, it'll be a shame if they don't build on this form line, which they've kind of created, particularly in that last game. So I just hope for the best, and come what come may. As I said, there is no right or wrong answer to this. It really depends on which school of thought you subscribe to.
Look, the players have told me that there's not an impact, but off the record, they're saying different things. Look, yeah, that's what I'd expect the players to be. I expect a no excuses attitude. Is kind of what coaches and players always take. But look, it's got to have been a struggle for them to have been away, basically locked up with the same 40 people since June. It's going to cause. It's just not. It's not their normal way of living. For that one. Nocturnal Rights has got an answer though. How about they get a cruise ship and take 10 days to get from South Africa to England, use that as their quarantine and take their families with them. Fantastic idea. There you go. That's what we call creative thinking, bar. On that one. So looking forward there for the All Blacks to their tour. Look, with the games against the USA, Italy, I've gone blank as the other two, Wales and Ireland. No, it's not Italy, is it? It's Wales, Ireland, and France.
Yep.
And Italy? There are 5 games.
Yeah, Italy's second up. So first
That's
up,
right,
USA.
5 games.
Italy.
There we go. Isn't being locked up with someone called Mary. Yeah, well, hey, we're not going to go there, Aaron. When we've got so actually. So the All Blacks, by the way, folks, are playing more games this year, more test matches, this year than they have ever played before, equaling the record set in 2008 with 15 test matches. Now, 2 reasons for this. I'm expecting 1, money, and 2, we only had 6 test matches last year. So the All Blacks head coaches are probably also wanting to give more players playing time and experience because they've lost 8 test matches in this Rugby World Cup cycle towards the next Rugby World Cup. So that's why. So I think there's probably 2 reasons for those extra games that we've had this year. So so the first game is against the USA. Then it's Wales. Both of those 2 are outside of the international window. So it's going to be interesting to see what side Wales can pick, considering their first and second choice fly halves both play in the English Premiership and won't be released. Then it's Italy, Ireland, and France is the last game there. So in that one. So look, I hope players like Topu Vai, Josh Lord, Braden Ennor, who's played next to no rugby, these guys get an opportunity, particularly in that USA and that Italy game. But any other kind of things that you would like out of this end of year tour, guys?
I was going to say a great thing about Lord and Tupu Vai, they both play for Taranaki, so in effect, they're already a combination. So,
and they also play for the Chiefs together as well.
Yeah, exactly, and the Chiefs, and they'll definitely have that combination. So yeah, I'd love to see them start as a combination against the USA, and maybe the same against Italy.
Yeah,
what
no
are you
question.
looking
I
for out of this end of year tour from the All Blacks?
Yeah, look, couple of things. Number one is obviously combinations, getting players, creating depth, giving them run-on form so that all adds up to what we call exposed form, i.e. Match or game day experience. And number two, I think consistency in tactics. One positive which has come out from the championship is the All Blacks are now willing to take the 3 points. I wish they took more 3 points more often, because if you recall in the last game, there were a couple of times we declined the 3, we went for the line out. And in fact, those are the 2 line outs the All Blacks lost. So consistency of tactics. And I'd like to see, the forwards really stand up and move away from this one-man cleaning out ruck system and actually put numbers to the ruck. And ironically, I have to again say, the only time we put numbers into the ruck was that last play, and was a turnover where Vermeulen got his hands on the ball. So for me, those are the 2 key things. Let's blood some young players. And number 2, let's look at getting some consistent street smart tactics.
LB says the ABs need to find their centre pairing, and I think that's something that's going to be an ongoing question, because obviously with Jack Goodhue not available for this one, for this tour, he has got to be in with a shout of one of those jerseys. So I think we're going to be into next year before we know who the All Black centre pairing really is. With that one, obviously a lot of people think it's Haveli and ALB at the moment, but we'll see going forward as to what that's going to be. I'm just excited to have more rugby, to be honest. Let's be honest, and we're actually going to see the All Blacks play somebody else other than and actually play some of the Six Nations teams, and also which we've just not seen for so long now. Since the actually, did they play any? Yeah, obviously the Rugby World Cup they played England. So yes, so clearly look on Ireland. So look, yeah, it's been so long since they've played these times. I'm just looking forward to that. Actually, it will be fun. Clearly, I'm not expecting much from the USA game. I have already lined up chats with the Attacking Scrum, who are a Welsh podcast, and Harping on Rugby, who are an Irish podcast. So look out for those shows, folks. I'll be on their shows and they'll be on mine. So look out for those as well. This weekend, though, the biggest game of the weekend. Well, we've got 2 big games. We've obviously got the Premiership final. We've got the rematch between Canterbury versus Waikato. Unfortunately, that'll be missing a whole bunch of Black Ferns. 9 players missing for Waikato. I don't know how many for Canterbury. But that game. But then again, then after that we have the Ranfurly Shield game between Hawke's Bay and Tasman. Tasman trying to gain the Shield for the first time ever this weekend. Boa, you're our predictions man on the old stats. Will Tasman get the Shield, and will they be flying back down to Nelson with it?
Yes, they will. I've been I did tip, so I have to eat a bit of humble pie. I did tip Southland to cause an upset. That never happened, unfortunately. Southland were way off the script. So, unfortunately, hey, you get some right, just get some completely wrong. There was one. So, I'm going for a special this week in a double, Canterbury and Tasman. Double. I think Canterbury will go to the world. They're not going to make the same mistake they did. They're not going to fall in the same pit they did at night, during which they did daytime last time. Again,
now hang on, let's be clear. You're talking NPC here. You're talking Wellington, Canterbury.
Beg your pardon. Canterbury and Tasman to be comfortable winners. That's what I'm picking. And Tasman will be carrying the logo boot. No question.
But not you're not making a Farah Palmer Cup prediction. You're making an NPC prediction there for Canterbury.
Yes, I am.
Just thought to be clear. Yep. And folks, look, Canterbury. Boa backed Wellington against Bay of Plenty. last weekend as well, and Blair Plenty won that by 1 point. So he was just out there. For some reason, Wellington, who have only beaten Northland this season, are favourites against Canterbury at $1.62. I really have no idea where they're coming from with those stats, to be honest with you. Stephen?
I'm with you on that, Paul. I saw those odds, and I think I might have posted it on our rugby chat. Absolutely staggered. I think Canterbury were playing $2.60 compared to Wellington, who were about $1.60. For me, that's
$2.18 for Canterbury.
$2.18. Well, that's double your money stuff. Even if you stuck a couple of bob on Canterbury. So I think Canterbury will just be too smart for Wellington. Wellington, unfortunately, they look like one of these teams that are not too sure of the style of game that they want to play. They're a very talented team and they can score tries from anywhere, but boy, there are times they make some horrendous mistakes, and unfortunately they're littered with ill discipline as well, especially at breakdown, and there's real question marks over their scrum as well. Their scrum, unfortunately, in the last two games against Hawke's Bay and of course Bay of Plenty has been owned, and that's where the game starts up front. And we saw with Canterbury the week before against Southland, they do pack a very, very good scrum, and that was probably the winning and losing of that game. I'm going to go to the last game first, Otago Taranaki. It's going to be interesting, this particular game, but I still think the way Taranaki are travelling, even with Otago at home, I think Taranaki will be too strong, even though they won't have Josh Lord. And of course, that third game, Hawke's Bay Tasman. You know what? I'm actually going to go with the holders, as crazy as this sounds, because I do believe up front they can match Tasman. And I don't know, I just think, I have a funny feeling the Hawke's Bay are going to be up for it. If Tasman are to lift the shield, I don't think there's going to be anything in it. No, they'll probably, if you think about Hawke's Bay, they've known this is going to be the big game of the season if they got past Bay of Plenty, and I think they will be up for it. They want to make a statement, and any team that's got Ash Dixon as your skipper and leader has got to be respected, and also they're showing they've got strength off the bench as well, so they've been finishing well, and hopefully Mickey Ellie too makes an appearance, because he's big for them. Very good loose forward trio, this Hawke's Bay team. So that's how I see that one.
Yeah, well, Stephen has to back Hawke's Bay because he's got family connections. Nocturnal says the Otago will do it. Taranaki due to fail. Having seen Taranaki against Bay of Plenty the other week, no, they're not. I'm sorry, but Taranaki have got that one well and truly tied up. They are a very impressive outfit for the championship. Look, some rumours going round. So you might have heard staff on SENZ at lunchtime today talk a lot about the NPC. But some rumours are going around that there might be no finals, and it will just be who finishes top of each table is the champion. Obviously, it all hinges on the application to get the three teams out of the Auckland zone that went in today. Look, if that application fails, then goodbye to basically those three teams, which being North Harbour, Auckland and Counties Manukau, taking part of the NPC. We'll just run out of time, unfortunately, as everything has to be wrapped up by, I think it was the 27th of November. Does that make sense? Yes, because that's a Saturday. So or was it 22nd, which is the Monday? Anyway, it's got to be all wrapped up by before the end of November. And so if these teams don't get that exemption, now whether they should or shouldn't, whatever is that's not for me to decide. But we'll see what happens with those three. And Aaron is wearing his blue and white jersey when he says it won't be a real NPC if Auckland is missing. So with that one, look, it's interesting times, right? We've got to do what we can do. There's a whole bunch of questions that to talk about around the TV contract. As Nocturnal Right says, does Sky not need the content? They do, but Sky doesn't decide how the Ministry of Health decides on whether teams are allowed to move or not move about the country. One of the things you may or may not have noticed when watching the Waikato game, for example, is that the electronic advertising hoardings were up but turned off because they'd been left up And the company that runs them is based out of Auckland and hasn't been able to come down and turn them on. And so hence there's been a whole lot of advertising revenue, for example, from those games. Also, Sky normally puts on virtual advertising overlays. Again, those people were stuck in Auckland and haven't been able to do that for games. So the coverage, you may have noticed, has been slightly diminished because of a few things that Sky can't do. Look, all these players and all these contracts and all these coaches' contracts all run out at the end of October. So where's the extra money coming from to pay for all those players and stuff through to the end of November? Look, the whole host of questions. I think we listed a bunch of them, Stephen, during our lockdown beers and #rugby chat. I don't think we have the answers. We can just point out what some of those issues are. I think it's probably the situation it is in. Look, I'm not blaming anybody. It's not the New Zealand Rugby's fault. It's not the province's fault. It's not the players' fault. It's not the government's fault. It is what it is, and we just have to live with it and just hope we can get as much rugby as possible. Basically, not the happiest note to finish on, boys.
I actually have got a happy note to finish on. Paul, I just want to say a massive congratulations to Renee Ranger on his 100th game for the Taniwha, and what made that even more amazing was to rock up after being out for 7 weeks with a broken arm and play a pretty faultless game on the night, and full credit to the rest of the lads for actually lifting for him on the night, and they rounded that off with a fantastic haka as well. As I flicked a text off to the Northland manager and said, you guys should celebrate every game that Renee Ranger plays over 100, and if you can come up with a performance like that, it'd be absolutely fantastic. So congratulations for the Taniwha boys for getting off the donut, and that was one heck of a victory over one of the top sides in the country at the moment. And listen, remiss of me not to actually congratulate the All Blacks. They did win the Rugby Championship, and I think sometimes we get a little bit hung up on a loss. They did go forward and win that, and all the best for their tour. But yeah, definitely some lessons to take on board after last weekend. Yeah,
Ranger Danger was man of the match. The question is, will he be able to, at 35 now, I think he is, will he be able to do that again next week? Or is that him done now? I think doing it, getting the adrenaline and doing it for your 100th game is one thing. Doing it week in, week out is another.
As long as he has a cigarette and a beer after the game, he'll be fine.
Also, another person that we should probably congratulations to is Marnie Banks. He passed 1,000 points in the NPC this weekend, playing for Southland against his old team Tasman. He did that with an incept try from halfway. I mean, boy, oh boy. Marnie Banks, not known as being Mr. Speedster. It was more of a fast jog than a sprint, to be fair. But hey, he made it and got over the line there with that one. So, yeah, hat tip to Marnie Banks. And Marnie's mum turned up to the game in a Southland jersey, but she had a Tasman jersey that she put on the chair next to her. So well done to her as well. So fantastic to see her there supporting her son.
And what it says is, nothing like NPC, provincial rugby, which brings out all these beautiful characters and all these beautiful statistics and all these events which have real connection to the community, and I'm sure the ACC headquarters down in Wellington would have been very happy to see Renee Ranger come back, because they would have spent a little fortune on his recuperation of his broken arm. And you're right, Paul. I think playing on adrenaline is one thing, and the ACC won't be too happy to see him back again for another crack. And I agree with Steve there, Mr. Harris. Look, congrats to the All Blacks. 90% win ratio so far in the season. 5 out of 6 wins. And as I said, All Blacks fans are very, very difficult to please. They seem to judge everything on the last game. And keep in mind, the world champs had to go to the world to get a last-moment penalty to beat them. So congratulations to both teams. After a long time, we actually saw a genuine test match, punch counter punch. And, it was fantastic. And as All Black fans as well, I don't think we can be too unhappy with that result, because we witnessed, absolute epic encounter. And sometimes, if you're going to lose, you might as well lose like that. So it is what it is. Lessons learned. Let's move forward. And looking forward to this Northern Tour.
Yep, we've got a couple of weeks, folks, where we can concentrate on the NPC, because obviously we won't have any international rugby, which is good. So yes, that will be obviously our focus next week, unless some amazing news pops up, like Silver Lake suddenly signs a deal or something, in which case obviously we'll talk about that, but who knows what will happen. One thing I have learned during this last 30, 40 odd days, or whatever it is we've been in lockdown, where I've been doing the 5 p.m. lockdown beers and rugby chat, is that there's enough news around rugby news every single day to talk for half an hour. So there'll be something happening between now and next week that we'll talk about. Don't worry, folks. And don't forget to do join me at 5 p.m. every day, where we'll be going through those things. So today we obviously talked about a bunch of stuff, including the Drua announcing 6 new players. So if you want to listen to that and learn about that, that's coming out at 5 p.m. every day, folks. Also out as a podcast as well. Thank you, Boa. Thank you, Stephen. It's another one in the can.